Good morning, everyone. We're going to start reading in 2 Kings chapter 5. 2 Kings chapter 5. If you take notes, that the title of today's lesson is going to be Stopping Short of the Blessing. Stopping Short of the Blessing. 2 Kings chapter 5, we're going to read verses 1 through 17. And it says, Now Naaman, captain of the host of the king of Syria, was a great man, with his master and honorable, because by him the Lord had given deliverance into Syria. He was also a mighty man of valor, but he was a leper. And the Syrians had gone out by companies and had brought away captive out of the land of Israel a little maid, and she waited on Naaman's wife. And she said unto her mistress, Would God my Lord were with the prophet that is in Samaria, for he would recover him of his leprosy. And one went in and told his Lord, saying, Thus said the maid, that this is in the land of Israel. And the king of Syria said, Go, and I will send a letter unto the king of Israel. And he departed, and took with him 10 talents of silver, and 6,000 pieces of gold, and 10 chains of raiment. He brought the letter unto the king of Israel, saying, Now when this letter is coming to thee, behold, I have therewith sent Naaman my servant to thee, that thou mayest recover him of his leprosy. And it came to pass, when the king of Israel had read the letter, that he rent his clothes, and said, Am I God, to kill or to make alive, that this man doeth send unto me to recover him a man of his leprosy? Wherefore consider, I pray you, and see how he seeketh a quarrel against me. And it was so, when Elisha the man of God had heard the king of Israel had rent his clothes, and sent to the king, saying, Wherefore hast thou rent thy clothes? Let him come now to me, and shall know that there is a prophet in Israel. So Naaman came with his horses and his chariot, and stood at the door of the house of Elisha. Elisha sent a messenger unto him, saying, Go and wash in the Jordan 7 times, and thy flesh shall come to thee, and shalt thou be clean. But Naaman was wroth, and went away, and said, Behold, I thought he would surely come to me, and stand and call in the name of the Lord his God, and strike his hand over the place, and recover the leper. Or not, I'm going to skip over those 2 names of the rivers. I probably won't be able to pronounce them anyway. But the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters in Israel. May I not wash in them and be clean? So he turned away and went into rage. And his servant came near and spake unto him, saying, My father, if the prophet had bid thee do great things, wouldest thou not have done it? How much rather when he saith to thee, Wash and be clean? Then he went down and dipped himself 7 times in the Jordan, according to the saying of the man of God. And his flesh came again into the flesh of a little child, and he was clean. And he returned to the man of God, and he and all his company, and came and stood before him, and said, Behold, now I know that there is no God in all earth, but in Israel. Now therefore I pray thee, take a blessing of thy servant. But he said, As the Lord liveth, behold whom I stand, I will receive none. And he urged him to take it, but he refused. And Naaman said, Shall there not then, I pray thee, be given to thy servant 2 mules burden of earth? For thy servant will henceforth offer neither burnt offering nor sacrifice unto other gods, but unto the Lord. So this is our first service of the new year. This is our first Sunday school lesson. And as we start the new year, we always have a lot of New Year's resolutions. If you were here Wednesday night, or if you listened to it on the broadcast, Brother Mark preached the title, Reaching Forth into Those Things That Are Before Us. He stated that many people throughout the world will start a new commitment to start a new leaf, turn over a new leaf, or quit an old habit. Can we all agree this morning it's a lot easier to say we'll change than it is to change? I was listening to an inspirational speaker the other day giving a lesson on how to manage your money in 2024. And in his speech, he mentioned that it's easy to see the end goal or where we want to go. But the hardest part is between where you're at and that goal. As Christians, it's our goal that one day we make it to heaven, and we all know that. But the steps in between our journey are the hardest to get to, the struggles. As we start this lesson today, I want you to think about where you are and where you're at in the journey of your life. Some of us have set goals in our lives for 2024. Well, will it be like 2023 and we just whittled our time away by discouragement, defeat, or the lack of desire? So a couple points and titles of this lesson that we call, I guess, subtopics is the first part is the greatness of Naaman. As we started this morning, let's go on our field trip, as I like to say when we do this, to Naaman's house. In verse 1, it says that now Naaman, a captain of the host of the king of Israel, was a great man, but his masters and honorable, because by the Lord had given him deliverance to Syria. But he also was a mighty man of valor, but he was a leper. Naaman was a great man, as it said, a man of valor. As we read and see how Naaman had won many battles, he was a captain of the host of the king of Syria. He was top dog. He was the alpha male. As we see here, we like to say that he had everything going for him. It's so interesting to me that the Bible goes into great detail how wonderful Naaman was, how he had everything together. But the tone changes about Naaman. It says, but he was a leper. Everything changes with this little conjunction. It's almost like everything was imperfect in Naaman's life until the point where it states he was a leper. Isn't this like in our lives? We can do 100 things right, and then one thing stumble us. One thing knock us down. One thing that makes us define who we are to everyone. We can look back over 2023 and say, well, I did this great thing, or I was able to travel to this great place, or I achieved that job that I wanted, and I did this and I did that. But then we look and we go a little further and we notice there was one bad thing that happened. Maybe it was the doctor come in and said, there's nothing we can do. We can't cure the cancer or the sickness. Or maybe it was a spouse that left, or maybe it was a death in the family or a financial struggle. And it seems like that one thing defined our whole year. That one thing has defined everything in our life. And maybe it's crossover from 2022 to 2023. And you're still holding on to that one thing that has defined. Perspective is what guides you. Perspective defines how you look at things. If you look negatively, everything looks negative. The devil and the enemy will like to do nothing more than point out your negativity or use it one mistake, even though you're trying to live a Christian lifestyle. A lot of Christians today walk around with their heads low, not because God doesn't have the power in their lives, but they let the devil plant seeds of doubt and makes them feel like all they see is negativity. And Naaman was at this point. Naaman was at the point that all of us as Christians have been before. How many of us as Christians get in that mindset that I'm going to live and do more for Christ this coming year? And that problems keep coming up. Or we grow up in a Christian home and thought these things will never happen to my family. And it does. Just because you're a Christian does not mean that you're exempt from bad things in life. The Bible states in Matthew 5:45 that I'm going to paraphrase, but it says it rains on the just and the unjust. That means you're going to have bad days. That means loved ones will pass away. That means that you might lose that job. You might go into financial struggle. It's going to happen if you're a Christian or not. It rains on the just and the unjust. We're all going to go through things, and it determines how we're going to get through them that matters. But I like to look at this verse that we start. Naaman, to me, had an identity problem. The Bible teaches in Leviticus that once someone is diagnosed with this disease of leprosy, they're removed from their houses. They're an outcast. You can't be around them. They're isolated where no one can be around him. And at this time, Naaman was now being labeled with this terrible disease. We all know where Naaman is at this point in life, and if we care to admit it or not. Some of us have come to church or come this morning and put this act on that we have everything okay. We put on our Sunday best and try to hide our hindrances and our issues in our lives, and then after church today we'll get in our cars and we'll go home and that problem is still there. We take it with us. It's like a luggage we take with us somewhere we're going. Maybe it's something we hide under as a metaphor under our coats that we don't want anybody to see, that we just hide it. How many years have you ended the year saying, next year will be the year that I let go and let God take control? Or that I'm struggling with a problem or situation, but God only can take care of it and knows the situation. Leprosy is also known as a Hansen disease. And this disease can be hidden for many years before it's being portrayed on the outside. After it has started to spread on the inside, it can be seen on the skin or losing limbs. It's an infectious disease that not only can leave scars and sores on the skin, but it attacks your nervous system to where muscles and reaction times become weak. Many people believe that this disease has died out during our biblical times or, during years ago, but WebMD states that 100 people per year worldwide will get this disease. Sometimes we think that we're above that disease and we're not going to come in contact with that in a spiritual realm. But as the statistics shows, somebody will get it. Somebody will get it. Will this be your year to come into that disease, or have you been carrying it on for year after year? As Christian, what is our spiritual leprosy? What is it? To me, maybe it's pride, bitterness, resentment, an addiction, and the list can go on and on. Just because as Christians no one sees this spiritual disease in our lives does not mean it's not growing. On the inside, it may grow day after day until one day it shows up on the outside. You're going to be able to deal with these problems only for so long before someone else notices. It didn't matter how much Naaman may have tried to deny it or run from his leprosy, eventually everyone would know. Everyone would see the outside effect of this disease. I know that you may not have intended to let this particular disease affect you or your marriage spiritually, or even your lifestyle. I know probably you started, I know when it probably started you thought I was a faithful Christian and I can handle it all on my own. I go to church, I pray, I've done it all these many years, I go through the routine, I can handle it. But eventually that disease starts to grow, and it grows into something that shows on the outside. But look where you are this morning. Your limbs of praise have been affected to a point either you can't lift them or they're falling off. Your feeling of joy has been affected to the point where everything you get involved with just doesn't seem to bring you joy, happiness anymore, that it's affecting your spiritual nervous system. You can't even simply smile in your day-to-day because you put yourself in isolation. And you go through day and day thinking things are going to change. They're just going to get worse. And you get to that point where you look at your life that you can be surrounded by multiple people and you feel all alone. There's people that's listening this morning and in this audience that probably feels that way. How many will come this morning and want to get in but can't because the burden or the disease, as I said, is keeping you from growing closer to God? Some of us has convinced ourselves that where we are in the situation is going to be the way it is until the end. It isn't over until God says it's over. There is still restoration power in the only name I know, in the name of Jesus. In verse 2 through 4, we see that, we're at this place, and it says the Syrians had gone out by companies and brought away a captive of the land of Israel, a little maid, and she waited on Naaman's wife. And she said unto her mistress, Would God my Lord were with the prophet that is in Samaria, for he will recover his leprosy. They had brought back this young girl, a captive, for Naaman's wife. I can just imagine she speaks to Naaman's wife, and maybe it's, I know I'm nothing. I know I'm just a merely captive. I'm just a prisoner in your house. I'm a servant, Brother Matt, and I know it may not mean much what I say. And you may not even take my words to help, but I know someone that can help you. This should be encouraged to each one of us that reads this. I don't have any fancy really degrees. I don't have any big letters out of my name. I'm not a major statue in the community. I'm nothing big. I'm just Brandon. And I was thinking when I was reading this that, but we see here where God uses a nobody to get Naaman to deliver the word. Naaman is trying to figure out how he can get deliverance from this incurable disease, and this little maid shows up and gives him an answer that no one else could have given but her. You may be thinking that there's no hope and no way out of the situation you're facing this morning. And this morning I feel like I'm kind of like the little maid. I'm nothing. I'm a mighty man, as I said, of God. I'm just a man that volunteered on the first Sunday to teach Sunday school. But I've come to tell someone this morning there's a man that can take away everything that you're dealing with. He can heal you this morning in whatever situation and whatever problem you're facing, and his name is Jesus. He says, I'm the same yesterday, today, and forever, which means that if he was the same during the time that he walked the earth, he must be the same now, Brother Tony, and that tomorrow when I face a problem and I deal with it, he can still do the same he did yesterday, Brother Terry. So we're getting this mindset where we're at. You can see the disparity of Naaman and how he's dealing with this problem, but he's kind of hiding it. I thought it was very unique in this situation that he's been labeled with leprosy, but he still has servants. So I would like to think that he is at this point where it's an internal, it's coming up small, so it's not infected to a point where he's hiding it. He's hiding this situation in his life so no one else can see it. And so he's heading to Israel. And we read, and it states in verse 4 and 5 that Naaman started his journey to Israel to deliver the letter with his servants, gold, silver, and his chariots. He had everything he thought he needed to see the king. And when he delivers a letter in verse 7, it states that the king of Israel had read the letter and that he rent his clothes. And he said, Am I God to kill or to make alive, that this man doeth send unto me to recover a man of leprosy? Wherefore, consider, I pray you, to see how he seeketh a quarrel against me. The king is outraged. The king is at a point that says, can you think that Naaman would come and he think I can save him? That I'm the man, I'm the man he seeketh after? Knowing Naaman is this great and honorable warrior, and he's worried, and it says here that he may seek us a quarrel against me. He's worried that Naaman may even try to harm him. Or, if he can't give him the answer he wants for the man, that he's going to start a battle between them. He's that great man, that great warrior. And in verse 8, Elisha states, Wherefore how hast thou rent thy clothes? Let him come to me, and he shall know that there's a prophet in Israel. Elisha steps into the situation and asks Naaman to come to his house. Is pretty much what that says. And when Naaman arrives to the house of Elisha sends a messenger, and it states, Go wash in the Jordan 7 times, and thy flesh shall come again to thee, and thou shalt be clean. To me, what Elisha is saying to Naaman is, the easiest part of your healing, the easiest part of this is your healing, but the hardest part is having the faith that you can do it and go there. The easiest part is God taking away your situation, what you're dealing with, and healing you, or putting the pieces back together. But the hardest part as Christians is letting go and letting Him do it. That is the thing we struggle with the most, is having faith that He can handle the situation. The faith that we know that, as I said before, we know where we're at, we know where we want to go, but that faith that He's going to have it all under control and giving into something completely that we have no control over. The situations is that, how do I deal with this? How do I go through this? And having to give over to that commitment. In verse 11 and 12 it states, But Naaman was wroth, and he went away and said, Behold, I thought he surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of his God, call on the Lord his God, and strike his hand over the place and recover the leper. Are not, as I said, there's the rivers of Damascus, but better than all the rivers of Israel, waters of Israel? May I not wash in them and be clean? So he turned away in rage. Naaman is wroth, which means he's outraged, he's mad, he's upset. In South Georgia language, I'm going to tell you how I thought of this. He walked up to the door of Elisha, knocked on it, and his messenger came out. You got to remember, Naaman is a high man in Syria. He is like the general of the country. He is the top dog, the alpha male, and he walked up and knocked on Elisha's door. And you sent your messenger out here to talk to me? Don't you know, Brother Ross, I'm Naaman. He probably has his nicest garment on. He's probably sees all the servants. He's got his battle gear. If they get in trouble with anybody, he's like, I'm the man. But you sent your servant? You sent this messenger to talk to me? You didn't even have the decency to come to the door and talk to me man to man? You're telling me because at this time he didn't believe in the God of Israel, our God. He was under a word from a maid that says, go try this out and see if it works. You got to understand that he's already has the idea that it's not going to work out. He's already doubting the situation. And he's like, Okay, but you didn't come talk to me. You didn't come to the door, but you want me to go to the river of Jordan and dip 7 times? So you're telling me the servant would generally come out and talk to me, but you won't strike me and heal me right on the spot? It's not that God wouldn't heal Naaman right there, but it was the walk to Jordan that he had to do to get the healing that he needed. Now, they're at this place, and Naaman's outraged. He's mad. He's traveled all this way. He's brought all this gold. He's brought all this silver. He's brought all these men, his servants, and his chariots. And he's already went to the king, and the king's rent his clothes, and he's mad. I mean, I can just picture it. It's probably, the desert place, and he's like, I've come all this way, and I'm still not healed, and I thought this was the way it was going to happen. The little maid told me that if he touched me and gave me the word, I pretty much could be healed. Is probably what the conversation went about that this mighty God that they serve he can heal me, Brother Matt. But I'm not healed. I'm still got leprosy. I'm still at this place, and it says that now he wants me to go dip in the river Jordan of all places. I just left Syria and the rivers of Damascus. These rivers were the clean and some of the most pure waters that I've ever come through. And it was convenient to me. It was convenient in the situation that I was in. And now you want me to go to this nasty, muddy, coldest river of all of Israel. And you want me not to dip just 1 time. You want me to dip 7 times. But it says in here, why couldn't he just go to Damascus? Why couldn't he just go to the rivers in Damascus? Why could he not just go? Why could not the prophet take his place and move to where I was at? Wouldn't it be better for me just to get cleansed in a pure river? But you want me to go to this river Jordan. I want you to picture it. It's a murky river. It's a nasty river. If you go, down the roads and stuff, when it rains, you can notice how our rivers will get a murky color. And historians and people even today still state that the Jordan is one of the muddiest, nastiest, coldest rivers of all of Israel. And I can just imagine, he's like, just outraged. Like that was an insult to him that I've traveled all this way and you want me to go to a subpar river to dip in. And Naaman turned away in rage and felt insulted by Elisha and would require him to do that in order to be healed. How many of us this morning will be honest and admit we pray sometimes and want God to work it out in our way and the way that's comfortable to us? How many times have you asked for a miracle or for God to move in a situation, but we put a stipulation on it, on how God wants to work? Naaman wanted his healing to be done on his time and on his comfort zone. God does not operate on our time, but he operates on his time. The Jordan River is a whole lot better when you have to take a trip to get there. The washing is a whole lot better satisfying when you have to take a few steps to get there. This is because if God did whatever you needed immediately healed every problem you're facing, you would not have faith in God. You would just rely on him to do it. If he instantaneously did everything you wanted to do at your time, on your measure, then you wouldn't have faith that he could do it. You just expected him to do it. You just expect him to move in a situation. You just expect him to do this. It's not like that. He wants you to have faith to be completely his and rely on him in every situation. And in our culture, we want everything instantaneously. If you go to one of the best, we can discuss this later probably if you disagree, but one of the best fast food restaurants that you can get food at in a quick time is Chick-fil-A. Zaxby's is terrible here in Moultrie. You'll wait in line forever. But the timing is instantaneous. You'll get an attitude sitting in Chick-fil-A line because it's all the way right around the building and you're like, I just want a chicken sandwich with a sweet tea. But if I don't have it in 5 minutes or less, I'm going to be mad. Or if they forget to scan my points, I'm going to be mad. We're in that instantaneous, culture. We want everything right then. We can look up any answer we want on our phone right now. Some of us in our culture has taken that and applied it to our spiritual lives that we want the healing right now. We want it right now. And the thing was, what Naaman was, he came all the way from Syria to Israel, so it was that he had to wait to get this to Israel, to the king, to even be healed. Some of us get aggravated to the journey to even talk about the healing, to even see the man about the healing before we ever get into the healing part. So why do we have to go through these times, Brother Matt? And I wrote this down, and I thought it was kind of interesting. It is hard to grow seeds on a mountaintop. You must grow them in the valleys of your life. If you go to Mount Everest is one of the tallest mountains in the world, if not the tallest, if I'm right. There's not a farm on top of Mount Everest. There's not an irrigation system. There's not a farm that produces life on top of Mount Everest. Where's the farming done around Mount Everest? It's at the bottom. It's in the lower levels. And I was thinking about this when I was writing this down. Sometimes in our lives we must grow in the valleys, because even though it's hard, and even though we go through them and we don't want to be there, we all want to be on someone that climbed our spiritual Mount Everest. We do. But you don't grow there. You grow in the valleys. And as we walk to the Jordan by faith, it tries our faith, and the devil knows that if we can make it to Jordan and follow after God's plan, then we're going to be stronger through God than we were doing our own way. If the devil can keep us out of Jordan, we will surely die in the situation that we're in and the problems we're facing. God had Naaman to realize how dirty he was before he got clean. God can't help you in your problem until you admit you have a problem. You must have the willingness to admit that we have problems and situations in our lives that we cannot deal with on our own. To experience a new you must first admit you have a problem. The best day of my life was when I admitted I was a sinner and that I needed God. I'm so thankful even when I couldn't go there, He was there. And He had to go way down deep sometimes to get me, but He saved me. In verse 13 it states, "And his servants came and spake unto him and said, My father, if there's a prophet that he bid you do so great thing," I'm going to paraphrase, "would you not have done it? If he'd have made you went to the king's house and done this great thing, would you have not done it?" Of course, I'd have done it. If you told me you wanted me to do some great thing, tell me you want me to give this great deed, yeah, I'd have done that. But you want me to go dip 7 times in that nasty river. So sometimes we just skim over 13 before we get to 14 where he goes to the river. In verse 13, we see how close Naaman was from his blessing. But we also see how close he was from missing out. One wrong choice and one wrong direction can truly mess up a blessing from God. As the servants in this time had to remind Naaman of the obvious. The prophet told him to go to the river Jordan. The servant says, if he had not asked you to do some great thing, then why won't you, and you would have done it, why won't you go to the river and at least try? Naaman heads to the river Jordan, as I stated before, and the river Jordan is the coldest, nastiest rivers of all of Israel. I can just imagine Naaman as he took off his shoes, Brother Tony, and he stepped on the banks of the river, and that ice-cold water touched his feet, and he stepped back. He's freezing, and he stepped back. And I can just imagine the servants, you see on the back, you got to go further. You can't just put your feet in. Can we all agree that when the water is cold, no one wants to get in? I remember as a kid in the summer, we'd go swimming around April, March. It's generally warm enough you can swim. And at this time, we might have to add a little extra pool or water to the pool. But it was warm enough outside, but when we got in the water, it was cold. It was freezing. As kids, we try to convince somebody that it's really not that cold. After you get 5 minutes in there and you've come completely numb and you're like, you got this. And in that moment they jump in, they're freezing with you. But you swim it out and they'll be okay. That's where Naaman was. Picture that in your mind. That's how cold the river was. And now Naaman is waded out in the water in hesitation. He's freezing. He dipped for the first time. To dip, you have to go complete body into this water, not just a little dab or a little bucket full. He had to completely submerge himself into this river. The first dip is always the hardest. I can just imagine as Naaman stood in the middle of this cold, shivering river and thinking, I have to do this 6 more times. I've done it once, and I got to do it 6 more times. Then Naaman took dip number 2, He gets up and nothing's changed. He repeats this process over and over again until he gets to number 6. I'm sure by this time there's probably people passing by on this river. There's probably a road there, and they're looking out there and they think, oh, I recognize that guy. That looks like Naaman, the great honorable man, this great leader. And why in the world is he dipping in this cold, nasty river? It's ridiculous, isn't it? He's crazy. He's at the point that people thinking like maybe they just stood there and watched and like, watch him. There he goes again. He's in his raiment. What is he doing? Why is he doing this? I can just imagine. And the servants go, well, I see him in the background. That's 2. That's 3. That's 4. That's 5. And I can just imagine when he got to finish dip number 6. I imagine he looked at his skin, Brother Mark, and he saw where he might still had sores. And nothing's changed. He probably had some thoughts that I would have that rolled over in my mind when I was reading this, and I thought I would have figured I would see some improvement at this point at dip number 6. And another thought I thought was, I look ridiculous following after this prophet, after his God and his idea of dipping in this nasty river of all places. And now I've done it not just once, but 6 times. I'm freezing, and what happens if after this time I dip and nothing happens, nothing changes, and I've wasted my time? Those are realistic questions that we ask every day. That if we're going through a situation where I've come to the altar, I've prayed 1 time, I've prayed 2 times, I've prayed for a whole year for this situation to move, and nothing's happened, and he wants me to go pray 1 more time? You want me to move 1 more time? But what if nothing changes? Naaman takes that faith that says, I'll try it 1 more time. I'm going to dip 1 more time. I'd like to believe on that time that he held his breath just a little longer. Maybe he was in the water and he rubbed his arms to see if he could cover up the sores to make sure. Maybe he was hoping that the healing of his arms would happen, or because he had faith, they put all into it at that one time that I'm going to Washington, Jordan. This is all the faith I got, Brother Terry. This is all I got. Is this 1 more dip. And if it doesn't work, I tried. Naaman rose after the 7th dip and he was healed. And it says his flesh came up like a little child and he was clean. The part of the verse that stood out to me was that his flesh came again to like a little child. As in today's society and in the ways we do it, we would say that his skin became smooth as a baby. Remember, Naaman was a great man of valor. He was a warrior. He was a fighter. And he probably had a couple wounds and scars in his life that showed on the outside. You don't become a captain without fighting a couple battles or getting hurt or having to get through it. But on the 7th dip, all that was healed. He didn't have leprosy no more, but he also didn't have the scars and the wounds, because it said it was a fresh, new skin. So not only did it heal the situation on the inside, but it healed the situations on the outside. It says that when we become in Christ, we become a new creature. Spiritually. I may have scars on this side of my life that I can't heal, that I remember, but God doesn't once you get plunged under the blood. Sometimes when we get in that experience, He washes all the scars, all the problems, and it goes away. Your disease goes away, those past scars. And I wrote this in bold in my notes that said, don't stop short of your blessing. What if he would have stopped at 6 and left? He'd have still had leprosy. He probably would have died. We can do all these assumptions, but it says in verse 17, and he returned unto the man of God, and he and all his company came, and he stood before him. And he said, behold, I know that there is no God in all of earth but in Israel. And now I pray thee, take a blessing of thy servant. Before the dip, all Naaman could think about was the dip. But after the dip, he didn't think anymore. He says, now I know. Now I know it was the Lord. Now I know it was this. This morning I'm a little transparent. I always get transparent, I feel like, when I teach Sunday school. But there's been times in my life where I've done a lot of thinking and a lot of wondering if God was God that Mom and Dad told me about. Thought about great men that stood behind this pulpit in the campground places that told about a God that could heal the blind and could heal the sickness and fix the marriages and help financial. And I've heard it all my life, but then I thought about it. Is it really what they say it is? That's me. The doubting of if God can really do this, if God can really do that. I've been raised in church all my life and I've heard it. God really is He really just as great and wonderful as they preach about? Can the doctors really fix? Well, they say there's nothing they can do, but can God just fix the broken heart? On the first Sunday of 2024, I can tell you that I've been through Jordan a couple times now. I've been enough to know that, not that I think God can do it, but I know He can. I know who He is. I know what He's able to do. In Ephesians 3:20, it states, "Now unto Him that is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all we think or ask, according to the powers that worketh in us." I know that He don't just stop at I know, but He can do the exceedingly, and abundantly. Abundantly is more than just the satisfying of where you're at, but it's the overflowing of a blessing that continues that we can't even count. It means that like when we're going through something, that He gives you the abundance grace to go through it, or the abundance of mercy. That means He gives you more than what you needed, more than that you wanted, more that you can have. He gives you that abundance, the exceeding of the abundance. So it's more than just abundance. It's the exceeding of the abundance. I was looking at the calendar when I was coming down the road this morning, or I was at a place to stop, and I looked. January 13th, 2023, I had been struggling with headaches every day for a year. Right at a year, almost. And right here, I was healed in that situation. I haven't had major headaches like that since then. Have I had some sinus issue? Yes. But nothing like a day in, day out headache. But I didn't get healing until I had to walk into Jordan. But Brother Brandon, he can heal it. Yes, he can heal at any time and any place. But I had to get out of my comfort zone and walk and be tired of the situation I was in. Have I dealt with bitterness? Yes. Have I dealt with resentment? Yes. But how do you solve that? You solve it by taking one step into that cold water and having enough faith that, Lord, if you don't get rid of it the first time, I'm going to do it 7 more or 6 more times. That's where we're at in the situations we're at. We've taken things in 2022 that we didn't think we can handle, and we take it with us to 2023. And then we've taken it to 2023, and now we're in day 7 of 2024. And some of us has taken those same burdens with us all these years, and you haven't let it down to go to the dip. Naaman gets up from the water and goes back to Elisha and offers to pay him for what he's done. And Elisha responds and says, "You don't owe me anything. God did it for you." And once Naaman realized they couldn't repay Elisha for what he'd done, Naaman asked this. And I've read the story my whole life. Well, I guess not my whole life, but I've read it numerous times in my life. And this verse stood out to me more in 2024 and studying this out this year and for this lesson than has ever done before. And it said, Naaman said, "Shall there not then, I pray thee, be given to thy servant 2 mules burden of earth? For thy servants will thenceforth offer neither burnt offerings nor sacrifice unto other gods but our Lord." Why did he ask for 2 mule loads of dirt? When I was praying about it and thinking about it, why would Naaman want dirt? Why would Naaman want this piece of ground that was nasty and of the Jordan? Why would he want it to take back to Syria? Naaman knew that right now he was in a good place. Naaman knew that God had just fixed and healed him, and there's nowhere else that he would rather been. Naaman knew that if he could not stay in the place, he could not stay in that place forever. But he knew he could take some with him. He knew that if he ever got in hard times, he could look back at that mule load and remember what God had done there. he could use it as a remembrance unto that. So how are we going to make it through 2024? We're going to go back and get a couple mule loads in 2023. And remember, God did it then, and I'm going to look at that dirt through 2024 and say he can do it there. That's how we make it through our situations, is remembering that we serve a God that can do exceedingly, abundantly, and above all that we could think or ask. But the most important thing of the whole lesson is don't stop at 6. Go on to 7. Try it out. If it doesn't work, and that's happened. It's happened in my life, and I've prayed and prayed, and I said, Lord, I've done it, I've prayed. But then I get to the point, Lord, if I got to do it one more time, I'll do it. And I hope you enjoyed our lesson, but my advice is 2024, go back and get you a mule load of dirt and remember what God has done.
All right, the junior class had 2 this morning.